By the late 1950s, Vietnam was divided not just by politics, but by destiny. In the north, the red flag of Ho Chi Minh's revolution waved above Hanoi. In the south, Ngo Dinh Diem's regime ruled from Saigon with American blessing. Both claimed to be the rightful government of all Vietnam, and neither intended to yield. The Geneva Accords were supposed to bring peace. Instead, they had built a fragile wall between two rival nations, and behind that wall, pressure was beginning to build. In the south, President Diem faced a growing insurgency he barely understood. In the north, Ho Chi Minh watched patiently, preparing for the next phase of the revolution. Ngo Dinh Diem saw himself as a savior, a man chosen to modernize Vietnam and protect it from communism. But his vision of governance was steeped in rigid hierarchy and Catholic morality. He distrusted the very peasants who formed the backbone of his nation and ruled through family loyalty rather than popular consent. His brother, Ngo Dinh Hu, oversaw the secret police. His sister-in-law, Madame Hu, known as the Dragon Lady, became the glamorous, iron-willed face of the regime, famous for her disdain of political opponents. The Diem family's control reached into every corner of government, from the army to the local villages. To many Vietnamese, Diem's rule felt eerily familiar, just another form of authoritarianism, this time dressed in the language of freedom and democracy. Critics were jailed or disappeared. Newspapers were censored. Monks who protested were watched. And still, American aid continued to flow, convinced that Diem was the only man who could prevent another communist victory in Asia. In Washington, optimism ran high. President Eisenhower's advisors believed that Vietnam could become a model state, proof that democracy could flourish in Southeast Asia. But the reality on the ground was far more complex. Beyond the cities, the countryside simmered with discontent. Peasants saw little of the promised reform. Land ownership remained unequal, corruption was rampant, and government troops often treated rural communities as potential enemies. In this climate of fear and poverty, the remnants of the old Viet Minh quietly began to re-emerge, this time under a new name, the Viet Cong, short for Vietnamese Communists. The insurgency began modestly, a few assassinations, small ambushes, propaganda leaflets scattered by night. But it spread quickly. Village by village, networks of informants, couriers, and guerrilla fighters began to take shape, supported by northern advisors and weapons smuggled along hidden jungle trails. By 1959, Diem's security forces were stretched thin. The government's Denounce the Communists campaign, meant to root out rebels, only deepened resentment. Thousands were arrested, tortured, or executed, many with little evidence. The repression turned neutrality into resistance. Men who once had no interest in politics took up arms against Saigon. In the same year, Hanoi formally established the Group 559, tasked with building a covert supply route through Laos and Cambodia. It would become one of the most famous logistical networks in modern warfare, the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Through dense jungle and treacherous mountains, tens of thousands of porters carried weapons, food, and ammunition southward. The trail was more than a road, it was a lifeline between two Vietnams destined to collide. For the North, it was preparation. For the South, it was a ticking clock. By the dawn of the 1960s, the conflict had escalated beyond Diem's control. In remote provinces, entire districts slipped into Viet Cong hands by night. Local officials feared traveling after dark. Government convoys were ambushed, radios sabotaged, bridges blown apart. The insurgency had become an organized rebellion, one that could not be easily dismissed. The United States responded cautiously at first. President Eisenhower sent additional military advisors. Then, in 1961, newly elected President John F. Kennedy inherited the problem. To him, Vietnam represented both danger and opportunity. He believed that a limited show of American strength could stabilize the region and prove U.S. resolve to its allies. Under Kennedy, American involvement deepened. Military advisors grew from hundreds to thousands. Helicopters arrived, bringing mobility and firepower to an army unused to either. Special forces, the Green Berets, began training South Vietnamese troops in counterinsurgency. And soon U.S. pilots flew reconnaissance and support missions, the first whispers of a coming storm. In Washington, the reports were confident. Advisors wrote of progress, new schools, and secure villages. But in the jungles of the Mekong Delta, a very different story was unfolding. Government control was crumbling, loyalty was fragile, and the Viet Cong, once a rumor, were now a force that could challenge entire battalions. The Americans viewed the struggle through the lens of the Cold War, democracy versus communism, order versus chaos. But for most Vietnamese, it was not ideology that drove them. It was survival, the choice between two governments, neither of which seemed able to bring peace. By 1962, Vietnam was a nation living in two realities. In Saigon, Diem's ministers spoke of modernization, progress, and victory. In the countryside, families dug trenches behind their homes and whispered of the next raid. The American presence was growing, but so too was uncertainty. Each new advisor sent to help South Vietnam found a country slipping further from control. The lines between ally and enemy blurred as villages changed sides again and again. And yet, the illusion persisted that just a little more aid, a few more troops, a few more helicopters would be enough to turn the tide. It was the beginning of a pattern that would define the decade ahead: escalation without understanding. By late 1963, the strain became unbearable. Corruption, rebellion, and the persecution of Buddhist monks led to mass protests in Saigon. Images of self-immolation, monks setting themselves aflame in the streets, shocked the world. To Washington, Diem had become a liability. To his people, he had become a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. On November 1, 1963, South Vietnamese generals, with quiet American approval, staged a coup. Ngo Dinh Diem and his brother Nhu were captured and executed. The man once hailed as the savior of Vietnam was gone, his dream of a strong, united South collapsing with him. But his death did not bring peace. It created chaos. Power changed hands again and again, as military officers and politicians fought for control. And through the confusion, the insurgency spread even further. The United States now faced a choice: withdraw and accept defeat, or intervene more deeply to prevent South Vietnam from falling. It was a decision that would soon lead to one of the most consequential chapters in modern history. Next, the storm arrives. American troops land in Vietnam, and a regional conflict becomes a global war.